The Prohibition cocktail, a great drink for you to try the next time you want to celebrate the fact that we're no longer in Prohibition. Welcome to the Cocktail Spirit from the Small Screen Network. I'm your host, Robert Hess. Now, quite often with old drinks, it can be hard to find out exactly where they came from or even get a general idea. These drinks pop up in a recipe book and it could have come 2 years before, 10 years before, 25 years before. Here's an example drink. We don't know exactly when it came about, but we can kind of guess pretty closely. It's called the Prohibition cocktail, which means it would have been during American Prohibition. And since the recipe first appears, as far as I could find, from the Savoy Cocktail Book that was printed in 1930, it probably came around right about before then. So let's take a look at the Prohibition cocktail. We're going to start off with 1 ounce of gin. Followed by 1 ounce of Lillet. Now in the Savoy, it specifically calls out Kina Lillet. Now the term Kina, and if you read James Bond's Casino Royale, he also calls out Kina Lillet for the Vesper cocktail. Lillet used to be called Kina Lillet. Some people believe that the recipe was reformulated when about the same time they changed the name from Kina Lillet just to Lillet, making it less bitter. Other people say not so fast, maybe that's not what happened. They just simply made the recipe more standardized so they could produce it at a higher volume, but it's basically the exact same recipe. So until that debate finishes, we don't know whether regular Lillet really is the same thing as Kina Lillet or not, but it's the only thing we have right now, so that's what I'm going to use. And we're going to use 1 ounce of Lillet as well. And then to that, we're going to add 2 dashes of Apricot Liqueur. And we're using the Bitter Truth Apricot Liqueur. Now this is not the same thing as apricot brandy. You might find apricot brandy in those little hip flask things in your liquor store that basically is just apricot flavored sweet alcohol that is nothing like a true apricot liqueur. So the Bitter Truth Apricot Liqueur really is a very good product. It's made properly with real apricots, and quite frankly, it's one of the first versions of real apricot liqueur to come back on the market. We're seeing other people focusing on some of these old style products just so we can actually get these real culinary cocktails without using some of the stuff that's evolved over time for the dive bars, I guess. So what I'm going to do to get 2 dashes, I'm going to take and use a little bar spoon. Just a little teeny bit here, it's about 2 dashes, and add that to it. Now you might not think that'll add an awful lot, but since both the gin and the Lillet are relatively calm in flavor, the flavor of the apricot liqueur is really going to stand out a bit. We're also going to use 2 dashes of orange juice. Now this is fresh squeezed orange juice. I highly recommend using fresh juices whenever possible. There are some juices that might be a little bit harder to fresh juice, like fresh cranberry juice or fresh pomegranate juice or something like that. But oranges, lemons, and limes, there's no reason not to fresh juice those. Now we're going to add the ice. Now the original recipe in the Savoy called for shaking this drink. The orange juice, I suppose, as a juice you should shake it, but since it's really not going to cloud up that much because we didn't add much, I'm going to take and stir instead. That's something I always want to point out to people. We notice we only used 1 ounce of gin and 1 ounce of Lillet, so this is a 2 ounce drink. It kind of illustrates that back in those days, drinks weren't these big, gigantic 8, 10, 12 ounce monstrosities sometimes you see today. They were nice small drinks, so I like to use nice small glasses. Most of my glassware I got from antique stores. So I recommend checking out your local antique stores and see if you can kind of browse around and find some really nice, elegant, and small glassware to put your drinks in. So it's at a certain level a martini style of drink. The gin is going to be predominant. The Lillet is playing the part of the dry vermouth. But it's got a sweetening ingredient from the apricot liqueur as well as orange juice rather than orange bitters. So technically this really isn't a true cocktail from the pre-1900, pre-Prohibition era because it doesn't have any bitters in it. Maybe that's what they were trying to get at, because during Prohibition we actually started seeing a lot less bitters come into drinks. Let's see what it tastes like. Well, I'm getting a lot of sweetness on nose. The apricot is really coming out here, and I think the orange is also helping pointing that out a bit. Normally I don't like using orange juice in drinks because it really deadens the flavor, but just adding kind of a drop or two adds a little teeny bit of flavor without deadening the overall flavors that you might otherwise taste. Oh yeah, that's delightful. I mean, the Lillet is very soft and smooth, and the apricot liqueur, even though we only added 2 dashes to it, like you saw, really is playing an interesting role and kind of adds that kind of sweet flavor to it without really overpowering it at all. So it's not overpowered, it's not too sweet, it's dry, it's got gin in it, it's got the Lillet. I think this is an excellent drink. A second sip just for good luck. There we have the Prohibition cocktail.